We all know biology is the study of life. But does biology really work on its own? Answer is no. Life doesn't exist in isolation, and neither does biology. To understand how living organisms function, biology joins hands with other natural sciences. Chemistry explains the reactions inside our cells. Physics reveals the forces behind movement and energy. And earth sciences show how life interacts with the planet itself. Together, these sciences help us understand nature not as separate pieces, but as one connected system where life, environment and physical laws work side by side to create the living world we see today. Now let's discuss some of the fields related to biology. The first one is biochemistry. Biochemistry helps us understand what is happening inside living cells at the molecular level. Every activity in our body, from breathing to thinking, depends on chemical reactions. Biology tells us what happens, and chemistry explains how it happens. For example, when we eat food, enzymes break it down into simpler molecules. These enzymes are biological, but their action is completely chemical. Another example is respiration. Inside our cells, glucose reacts with oxygen to release energy, and this entire process follows chemical laws. A third example is DNA. DNA looks like a biological structure, but it is made of chemical molecules arranged in a precise sequence that carries genetic information. So, biochemistry shows us that life is not just about organs and cells. It is also about molecules and reactions working silently inside us every second. Now, let's move to the next field, biophysics. Biophysics helps us understand life by using the laws of physics. Biology tells us what happens in living organisms, but physics explains why and how it happens in terms of force, energy, and motion. For example, think about how your heart pumps blood. The movement of blood depends on pressure and force, which are concepts from physics. Another example is breathing. When we inhale and exhale, air moves in and out of the lungs because of changes in pressure inside the chest. A third example is the movement of muscles. When you walk or run, muscles contract and relax, and this involves mechanical forces and energy transfer. So, biophysics helps us understand living organisms as machines that follow physical laws. Life may look complex, but it still obeys the same rules of physics as the non-living world. Now, let's talk about biotechnology. Biotechnology means using living organisms or their parts to make useful products for humans. Here biology helps us understand living things and technology helps us use them in a practical way. For example, bacteria are used to produce insulin, which is given to diabetic patients. This medicine is made in laboratories using biological knowledge. Another example is the use of yeast in making bread. Yeast is a living organism that helps the dough rise. A third example is vaccines. Vaccines are developed using weakened or inactive microorganisms to protect us from diseases. So biotechnology shows us how biological knowledge is not limited to books or classrooms. It directly improves our daily life, health, and survival. Now let's move to another important field called bioinformatics. Bioinformatics connects biology with computers. Living organisms, especially humans, have a huge amount of information stored in their DNA. Studying this information manually is almost impossible, so scientists use computers to help them. For example, computers are used to study DNA sequences and identify genes related to diseases. Another example is comparing the DNA of different organisms to understand evolution and relationships between species. A third example is using computer software to predict how proteins are formed and how they might behave inside the body. So bioinformatics helps scientists handle large biological data quickly and accurately. It makes modern biological research faster, smarter, and more efficient. Let's talk about biostatistics. Biostatistics is the use of mathematics in biology. In biology, scientists collect a lot of data, and biostatistics helps them understand what the data actually means. For example, when doctors study how a disease spreads in a population, they use numbers and graphs to analyze the data. Another example is testing medicines. Scientists use biostatistics to check whether a new drug is effective or not. A third example is population studies, where biostatistics helps in understanding birth rates, death rates, and the growth of populations. So, biostatistics helps biology become more accurate and reliable. It allows scientists to draw correct conclusions instead of guessing. Now let's discuss computational biology. Computational biology uses computers to understand and predict biological processes. Sometimes real-life experiments take too much time or are too complex. So scientists use computer models to study life processes. For example, scientists use computers to predict how a disease might spread in a population. Another example is studying how proteins fold into specific shapes inside cells using computer simulations. A third example is modeling how cells grow or how organs develop over time. So, computational biology helps scientists test ideas safely and quickly before doing real experiments. It saves time, reduces cost, and improves accuracy in biological research. Now, let's talk about bioeconomics. Bioeconomics connects biology with economics. It helps us understand how biological resources are used wisely so they are not wasted or destroyed. For example, managing fisheries requires knowledge of fish populations so they are not overfished. Another example is agriculture, where biological knowledge helps farmers increase crop yield while keeping costs low. A third example is protecting forests and wildlife, where economic planning is needed to balance human needs with environmental conservation. So bioeconomics teaches us that living resources are valuable and limited. By combining biology with economics, we can use nature responsibly and ensure sustainability for future generations. In conclusion, biology does not exist in isolation. To truly understand life and solve real-world problems, biology must work together with other sciences like chemistry, physics, mathematics, computers, and economics. Fields such as biochemistry, biophysics, biotechnology, bioinformatics, biostatistics, computational biology, and bioeconomics show us how these connections make biological study deeper, more accurate, and more useful. Together, they help us understand life not just as a subject, but as a system that affects health, environment, and the future of humanity. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like it, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel for more simple and clear explanations of biology. Keep learning, stay curious, and I'll see you in the next video.